When I think about the direction our country is going and the voices that influence millions of people every single day, I often find myself praying for clarity, wisdom, discernment. And recently, during one of those quiet moments with God, I felt a stirring in my heart, something that pushed me to look deeper at the way we talk about leadership, influence, and responsibility in America. It was during that moment that I felt God press something on my spirit about what it means to truly lead people, especially in a world filled with noise, opinions, and non-stop information. This reflection led me to think about Charlie Kirk, not as a target, not as someone being judged, but as a symbol of the kind of influence that shapes conversations across the United States. Whether people agree with him or disagree, there's no denying he has become a familiar voice to many Americans. And as I sat with this thought, I realized the message God was giving me wasn't just about him, it was about all of us, and how quickly we elevate voices without always stopping to ask what spirit is guiding those conversations. I began remembering something David Yonggi Cho often emphasized in his teachings: the power of prayer, the importance of seeking God's heart before forming conclusions, and the responsibility that comes with influence. Cho talked frequently about how leaders, whether spiritual or public, carry a weight on their shoulders that can shape the mindset of entire communities. And as I reflected on his teachings, I felt God reminding me that every influential person in America needs prayer more than judgment, guidance more than criticism, and spiritual covering more than constant debate. What God showed me wasn't a message of scandal, fear, or shock for the sake of drama. It was a reminder that when someone speaks to millions, whether on TV, podcasts, social media, or from a stage, they are stepping into a spiritual arena that is far bigger than their audience. That includes Charlie Kirk, and it includes anyone who stands in a place of national influence. The conviction I felt was about how easily we treat public voices like entertainment, rather than recognizing the massive spiritual responsibility attached to their platforms. What God showed me wasn't a message of scandal, fear, or shock for the sake of drama. It was a reminder that when someone speaks to millions, whether on TV, podcasts, social media, or from a stage, they are stepping into a spiritual arena that is far bigger than their audience. That includes Charlie Kirk, and it includes anyone who stands in a place of national influence. The conviction I felt was about how easily we treat public voices like entertainment, rather than recognizing the massive spiritual responsibility attached to their platforms. In that quiet moment, I sensed God saying that many people in America, leaders, influencers, and cultural voices, are speaking from a place of passion, but not always from a place of prayer. We live in a time when boldness is admired, but humility is often ignored. We celebrate strong opinions, but rarely stop to ask whether those opinions are shaped by God or simply shaped by the times we live in. And that's where the connection to Yonggi Cho's message became so clear. He spent his life reminding people that spiritual authority doesn't come from popularity, talent, or charisma. It comes from surrender. As I reflected on Charlie Kirk specifically, the message wasn't about whether he's right or wrong, good or bad. It was about something deeper, about how every influential figure needs a heart anchored in God, not just a microphone and an audience. I felt God pressing a gentle word, not just for me, but for all of us. When influence grows faster than spiritual maturity, a person can become a voice that draws attention without drawing people closer to truth. God showed me that the American church, Christian communities, and even everyday believers are often quick to follow someone who sounds confident rather than someone who is seeking the heart of God. And that's where discernment becomes essential. Not to judge, not to tear down, but to pray with intention, to listen with wisdom, and to examine every message through the lens of Scripture. We're living in a culture where influence equals power, and power can pull a person toward purpose or pull them away from it. The surprising thing I felt God highlight was the importance of compassion. When he shows us something about someone else, it's never to expose them, it's to remind us to pray for them. I didn't feel a message telling me to criticize Charlie Kirk. I felt a message telling me that leaders like him need spiritual covering, guidance, accountability, and humility. God's heart is always restoration, clarity, and truth, not division. And that's when the message truly hit me. What God showed me wasn't about Charlie Kirk alone. It was about America, about how divided we've become, about how quickly we attach ourselves to strong personalities because we're searching for direction, identity, and certainty in a world that feels unstable. I felt God asking a simple but powerful question. Are you following the voice of a person, or are you following my voice? That question pushed me into deeper prayer. It made me think about my own choices, my own influences, the voices I let shape my thinking. It reminded me that God doesn't ask us to follow charisma, he asks us to follow truth. And even when someone speaks with passion or conviction, it doesn't always mean they're speaking from a place of divine insight. Influence is a gift, but it's also a test. So what shocked me wasn't a revelation about Charlie Kirk as an individual, it was the realization of how much power American influencers carry in shaping our culture, and how desperately we need prayerful, humble, spirit-led voices in those spaces. I felt God urging me to pray not just for one person, but for all public voices in our country, to pray that they would be guided by integrity, humility, and spiritual grounding. If anything, the message was a wake-up call to remember that every influential figure in America, political, social, or religious, needs God's guidance as much as anyone else, and the responsibility falls on us too, to approach these voices with discernment, compassion, and a heart aligned with God's will. In the end, what God showed me wasn't about tearing someone down. It was about lifting them up in prayer. It was about recognizing the spiritual weight of influence. It was about remembering that leadership without humility is dangerous. Influence without prayer is unstable. And passion without truth can easily become confusion. And maybe, just maybe, the message God was really giving me was this. America needs voices that speak with love, wisdom, and spiritual maturity, not louder voices, truer ones. And that begins with prayer. It begins with discernment. And it begins with each of us asking God to guide the influences we listen to, the conversations we join, and the direction we allow our hearts to follow.